Hello, my soul brothers and soul sisters. I am Ron Smith, and this is the Dr. Ron Smith Investigate Show, where we separate the real from fake, the fact from fiction, and give you the winner's edge. And sometimes we're able to turn your water into wine. And today we have a special guest, and our special guest is Mr. Anthony Owens. Anthony, how you doing today?
I'm well, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Good to have you on the show. Let the people know who you are and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, I'm Anthony Owens. I was born in a place called Dawson, Georgia, and I grew up in Brooklyn um, under some difficult circumstances, raised by a single parent and all. Then I wound up going to the Navy, and I've written a book, which turned out to be an award-winning book about my life, actually. It's a memoir. And it's called Syrup Sandwiches, like the kind you pour on pancakes, and syrup sandwiches, but the title is called Choose Not to Give Up. And it's about the traumas and the difficulties that we all go through in life, but never being defined or defeated by those traumas or situations, and always doing everything you can to not give up and make it.
Now, I used to live in Americus, Georgia. So tell me, where is Dawson, Georgia, in regarding to Macon, Atlanta, or etc.?
Well, I left Georgia when I was 2 years old, so all I can tell you is it's probably like 2 hours from Atlanta. So
Okay,
that's the best I can tell you.
okay. So apparently you haven't been back since that time.
I did when I was younger, but I don't remember much about it. But I tell you, I really can't claim Georgia, and I think it's a disservice to say I can claim Georgia even though I left when I was two. So Brooklyn is what I really know a whole lot about.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about your community in the BK. I'm quite sure that was an experience in itself.
Yes, and so being raised by a single parent, and we had to, a lot of times we didn't have a lot of food, and so we had to make sandwiches that were out of condiments like ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and syrup. I particularly enjoy syrup, and so I wanted to write this book because the things that I had to go through, which is not uncommon to a lot of people. I went through domestic abuse, single parenting, fatherlessness, bullying, discrimination, poverty, and which a lot of people have gone through it. But my book is about going through all those trials and tribulations and not being defeated by those situations. And I wanted to write about it because I felt like I couldn't have been the only one going through it. So I wanted people to believe in their God, believe in themselves, and choose not to give up. So that's why I wrote the book.
Okay, now the title. That's very distinct, by the way. It got my attention. So why syrup sandwiches?
Well, as I mentioned, we had to eat sandwiches that were made out of condiments, and syrup was my favorite, and I enjoyed it because I like the sweet taste and everything. But when you're hungry and you don't have enough food, you'll find a way to find something to satisfy that hunger, and syrup sandwiches was my go-to staple, right? And I particularly enjoyed it so much, and I wanted to write syrup sandwiches because people who have gone through those similar situations, they can relate to syrup sandwiches when they hear the title, and those who have not, at least be inquisitive to want to know why I wrote it. So it was like a catch, but the book definitely is not about food.
Right. That's what I'm understanding. Now, you also, you talk about your brothers and sisters. So how would they motivate you to actually be the man that you are right now?
Well, since neither of our fathers was there except for my sister, and she was born later on, I had to step up and take on the responsibility of being the man of the house. And so I started working at a really young age. At the age of 8, I was going to the grocery stores, packing bags so that I could help my mother, with some, make some more money for the house because she struggled. We was on welfare, and it was just a bad time back then. And the most difficult part was all of the men in my family, including my grandfather, they were all abusive. And watching those abusive men and how they treated the women who really loved them, I saw in them how I never wanted to be. And so those they motivated me, unbeknownst to them, I learned how not to be like them.
So tell me about some of your mentors or some of the icons that you aspired to that gave you inspiration.
Wow. And I didn't really have any inspirations until I got older because I was really consumed with just doing everything I could to help provide for the family. And I know as a child, I shouldn't have had that much responsibilities, but there was nobody else to do it. And so I looked at the church leaders. I looked at, some, different figures that I saw, people that were actors and things that I saw, but there was no one that I could directly point to and say, I wanted to be like them, or I learned a lot from them. But I did learn some things from going to, Sunday school and from the teachings of the preacher.
Okay. Okay. So now, I want to get into the process of you writing the book, but what inspired you to actually think that, hey, I can be an author?
Well, yeah, that's funny that you asked. I initially started writing a book a lot of years ago, and I probably had maybe 5 pages, and I put it down. I kept saying I was going to go back to it, and I kept procrastinating, and I kept what I call getting in my own way. And what I was doing, I kept telling myself that I didn't know how to write a book, and I kept putting it off and putting it off. And then after the pandemic, I realized that I could write a book. And so what I decided to do, I tore up those 5 or 6 pages that I had, and I started from the beginning, and I started going and typing and writing every chance I got, and it took me about 4 months to write everything. And then at that point, but the longest part of it was doing the editing process. That took 8 months. And what I did learn is that during the writing process, it was really it was like a flashback of my life, and there was times when as I was writing, I found myself shedding tears because I really had a really difficult life, and I didn't realize how difficult it was as a child and growing up because everybody around me was going through the same thing. But as an adult, I reflected on those things that had happened to me, and it kind of hit me. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, what was the first? I guess I find writing to be therapeutic, as especially I hadn't decided to write a book about myself, but I can imagine that it was a therapeutic and a cleansing process, and also uh, it was a part that look how far you have came from from the beginning. So was any of those things connected you to almost like I guess that in internal intestinal fortitudes?
Yeah, when I reflect on it, and it was a lot to go through as I was writing it, and it was therapeutic too because I was able to see where I was, how I got to where I am now, and then to be able to rejoice in that fact. And I didn't do it on my own, right? I had a strong God fearing mother. I believed in the Lord, and I believed in myself, and so all of those things combined helped me to get to where I am today. And so I didn't do it on my own.
Well, would you give us a little preview of maybe some of the chapters in the book, just to whet our appetite, and for our viewers to actually go out and maybe purchase it, and you could tell us where we can actually get the book?
Okay, yeah. So my first chapter, the first chapter in the book is called "Surf Now and Later," right? Now and later. Remember the candies Now and Later? So my brother and I, we used to take those Now and Laters and put them on a radiator and let them melt, and we would stretch it and eat them like they were saltwater taffy, the taffy that we couldn't afford. But then we also had a bad experience one day going to the store, and we witnessed the owner of the store and one of the workers getting shot, right? And so that changed a lot for us in our minds because it was our first real traumatic experience to see someone had died, right? And but we had to deal with it. And what was more challenging than anything was that our mother, who was going through so much, it was difficult to go to her and talk to her because she was already going through some emotional turmoil, going through abusive relationship, and so a lot of the things that we had to deal with, we kept them to ourselves. And then, and as you go later on in the chapter, the very next one is when we start going because we grew up in the church, and I know a lot of people grew up in the church. Every time the church doors open, we were there, and so that gave us our foundation, right? And that kept us leveled and even keeled so that we stayed out of trouble. We focused on going to school, and if it wasn't for the church, who knows where we would be right now, right? So, and then as you go on later on in the chapters, I talk about how my family moved from Georgia to New York, and then eventually I talk about joining the Navy and not knowing how to swim. that was that. I don't even know why I joined the Navy, but there was nobody I could talk to and get any real advice because, like I said, the men around me were irresponsible and abusive. So I had to make all the decisions on my own, and I chose the Navy to be different because I knew I had two other cousins who had gone to the Army, and I wanted to be different. But it was definitely an experience. And then after that, I wound up getting married, having a child, and I wound up having a foster child, and I did big brothers, big sisters. So I wanted to give back. Once I got to a point in my life where I knew that I was able to provide and help others. That was my goal.
Okay. The former United States Marine, hoorah.
All right.
And so,
Thank you for your service.
and I appreciate you, sharing your experience. So, my moment a question might be a sidebar. When did you learn how to swim?
Well, it was not easy, right? When they told me to jump off the diving board into what looked like an ocean to me, at that point they knew what I didn't know all along, that I couldn't swim to save my life. So I had to go to remedial swimming, and that took about 2 weeks. And all I had to do was be able to float across the width of the pool, and luckily I was able to do that. And so, it didn't come easy, and I still don't think I'm a very strong swimmer now, but I'm still here now.
We're glad you learned how to swim. Hey, I got a friend of mine from Dallas, Texas. Her name is Paulette Johnson, and basically she grew up with a similar background. So, if you were going to give her some words of motivation, what would you tell her right now?
I would tell her to believe in herself, right? And no matter how difficult life is, and because we're all going to go through some some challenging times, but focus on.
Well, I tell you what, can we go to a commercial break until we get back to Mr. Anthony Owens? He just author of the book called Serb Sandwiches, and he's a Navy veteran. And basically, his book is talks about his life, how he grew up in a single parent household, and how he navigated himself to be able to get into the United States Navy, and how he was also being a 20-year veteran, and how he is planning to give back to his community. So, Anthony, welcome
Yes,
back.
sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
how are you giving back to the community besides, you expressing yourself in your book called Serb Sandwiches?
Well, I go to the schools and I talk to the youth, right? I talk to them about empowering them, them empowering themselves, believing in themselves, not giving up, staying focused in school. I also go to the homeless shelters, and I do a lot because there's not a lot of people doing that, right? And so I feel like the way I see it, I don't want all these young people and even older people to go through some of the things that I've gone through. And since I've learned a lot and I've grown a lot, I want to share what I've learned with someone who's going through some similar situations and help them to try to avoid them as much as possible.
Have you decided how to teach other people how to swim, or is this your method of actually people teaching them swim through life?
Well, it'll be more than swimming through life because I'm really not a great swimmer at all. But I will say that life will make you or break you, right? And if you have to be strong. And I do a lot of online with like TikTok and Instagram, and so I have a audience. And I would always tell them that we should not get in our own way. And what I mean by getting in our own way, whenever we tell ourselves that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we don't know enough, those are things that what I classify as getting in our own way. And I let people know that they can be or do anything they want to do in life if they believe in themselves and not get in their own way, because nobody can stop them from their own greatness but them.
Right. So, if someone have an idea that they want to put on paper, what would be your advice of how to actually do that and how to get started? And you could tell them about your publishing process.
Uh, yeah, and I tell people all the time that as a writer, your job isn't to write isn't your job isn't to write a book. Your job is to first get it out of your head and onto paper, right? or I'll type it
Right.
up. I like to say paper because that's old school. But to get it out of your head, thank you, sir. All right, thank you. To get it out of your head and onto paper. And then once you get it all, and do it every chance you get. Every chance you get that you have the opportunity to write something, do it. And over time, you'll realize when you go back and look at it that you have pages and pages of stuff that you took out of your mind and put it down on paper. And then at that point, you're going to have to go with your editors and have them move things around and put it all together. At that point is when you're starting to write your book. Not until then are you writing a book. All you're doing as an author, and I tell them this, make sure you get it written down and then worry about it afterwards. Because once you get, because a lot of people have writer's block, right? And it's hard for them to get it out of their head. So that's why I tell them to do it every chance you get, write down something. And once you get that done, then you start the writing process.
Okay. So what was that process for you? After you wrote it down, then what was the next step for you?
After I wrote it down, I looked at it and realized that I had a lot of pages. And then I started to look into see if I could find someone who could help me figure out how to create this book because all I had was just pages of words. And then I had to find someone to help me do the content editing, developmental editing, and things. And it's important that people do get a good editor to help them put things together to make it flow, to make the sentence structure, um, go like it should, right? And so don't shortchange yourself by trying to, take away getting a good editor because that's the biggest part of doing a quality book. And once I did that, I realized that it was easier because they showed me how to move certain things and make it flow, and made it better. So when you listen to it or when you read it, you'll see it actually flows from. It's basically chronological because I wanted to do it when I was younger, and as I got older, all the way up to the end. And so I just I let people know to please pay. If you need to pay some money for your editor, please do it.
Okay. So so now we got that out of our head, and now we got a person who could help us get organized. Then what's the next step?
Okay, once you've gotten to the point where you've gone back and forth with your editors and you feel like it's good and they feel like it's good as well, or at that point, then either you're going to try to go to a literary agent, which is what I tried to do initially, and unfortunately, I was met with a lot of it's not a good fit. It's not a good fit. So eventually, what I wound up doing was self-publishing. At that point, then all you do is basically submit all your paperwork, submit it through Amazon, KDP, and it's just a process that you input your information. They'll format it for you as far as putting it into a book, and then the rest is history because at that point they'll print it out for you. They'll charge you a certain amount, and then you at that point then that's when you start doing your marketing, and that's very important. Marketing is the most expensive part to writing because if you're not out there putting out your name out there and letting people know who you are, you're never going to get any traction. So and it's very expensive, and I found that out the hard way.
Yes. Matter of fact, your neighbor had talk to me about you, and you got some people out there on the street that's speaking your name and saying great things about you, and that's one reason why
uh,
I had to get you on my show. So
well, I feel honored.
shout out to Sister Betty Murray.
Thank you, Betty. I appreciate you. I don't take any of this for granted. I really don't. I'm a very humble person because I came from humble beginnings, right? And so I appreciate anything and everything. So that's good.
And make sure you tell her you was on my show because I didn't tell her I was going to have you on my show.
Um,
So
but
how have you
good.
been promoting your book?
Wow.
All right, we back. I think I lost the sound. I can't hear you. While Mr. Owens is trying to get back on our video, we're gonna do a commercial break and see can we get him back. And we're talking to Mr. Anthony Owens, and he's the author. His latest project is called Serve Sandwiches. And within Serve Sandwiches, he's talking about how he came from humble beginnings and to being a Navy veteran. And we hadn't really got into what he's doing now, but he's been an IT professional at one of the government facilities in the 757 Hampton Roads area. And he been promoting his book, Serve Sandwiches. So we're going to take a commercial break and see can we get the audio back. Hello, my soul brothers and soul sisters. I am back. This is the Dr. Ron Smith Investigate Show, and our special guest is Anthony Owens. And we had a few technical difficulty, so hopefully we have him back. Mr. Owens. Would you exit out and come back? So as we wait for Mr. Owens to get back, we are getting ready for season 3 of the Dr. Ron Smith Investigate Show. I got a lot of exciting things that I want to share with you about our new project.
Hello.
All right. We're back with Anthony Owens. He is the author of Serve Sandwiches, and we were talking about the book, and he was going through the publishing process, and we're in the process. Well, we left off as he's self-published, and now he is marketing his book, and he was sharing with us some of the things that he was doing, and tell us about some of the interviews you have done and some of the places that you have did autograph signings.
Well, I've done autograph signings in Virginia Beach, in Norfolk. I've done a couple of book festivals, one in Richmond and the other one in Charlotte. I've been on Channel 13 and Channel 10 News. Right now, over in London, England, my book is ranked at number 3 on the top list of 100 books. So it's definitely starting to circulate, and people are definitely it's gaining some traction. And hopefully it'll get to the people that really need it, because I don't know if you had the opportunity to read the reviews, and they're really, really great reviews, because it's impacting a lot of people's lives. And I remember one time a guy came up to me and he said that he wanted to thank me, and I asked him why. He said, because I read your book and I realized that you didn't have a father growing up, and I have my children here with me, and I haven't been spending the quality time with them like I should, and I want to say thank you, because now I realize how important it is, and that's what I do now. And I said, wow, I was overwhelmed with joy just hearing that.
I talk to a lot of men, and matter of fact, I'm a director of men's at my church, and I'm finding that our story is not unique. And the thing about it is that we need to talk about it more, so basically we can start building a network and a support system, because we don't know that we don't know, and that's the thing about. And of course, men are not, we need to get more involved with our emotional intelligence, so we'll be able to communicate. And your book can be used as a bridge to achieve that. Have you found that to be true?
I agree, because when I do my social media lives, I talk to the men about emotional intelligence. I talk to them about it's okay to show your emotions. It's okay to cry. It's okay to seek therapy too, right? Because a lot of times, and it's also okay to ask for help, right? Because a lot of times men, they become so stubborn and their egos get in the way that they don't know when to ask for help. And And I let them know seeking help is not a sign of weakness; it's a sign of strength because you realize that you're at your wit's end.
Right.
And,
And see, that's one of the things that I'm over the last couple of years, I'm getting more and more in touch because I have to be able to be transparent enough to share the good, bad, and ugly of being a black man in America.
yes,
And
yes.
we have a couple more minutes left. How can people get your book, and how can they contact you? Give us your social media platforms, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, if you go to my website, it's called www.anthony. Oh, excuse me, I take it back. www.ant Owens, Owens. So my name is Anthony Owens. My website is www.ant, which is short for Anthony, and then Owens, Owens.com. There you'll be able to click on any of my books. And let me tell you real quick, I have 3 books right now, and I'm working on the 4th one. The first one obviously is Serve Sandwiches, the award-winning book. The second one is a book about bullying for children. It's called Raw Power, and that's a really, really good book, and that's available on Audible. So is Serve Sandwiches. So people who don't have time to sit down and read a book, they can actually listen to Serve Sandwiches and Raw Power, the children's book. And then the third book that recently came out is a suspense thriller. And so what I wanted to do, I wanted to throw my hat out there and try. I wanted to challenge myself by doing something different. I wanted to write a fiction. So that was my first attempt at fiction. I've got some really great reviews thus far, but the jury is still out on that one. And the one that I'm currently
Okay.
working on, the one I'm currently working on, is called Fatherhood Matters. And Fatherhood Matters is about, because it's really near and dear to my heart, because like I said, I was raised by a single parent, and I talk about how the role of fathers, that how important it is that that we are active and present in the lives of our children, and that it makes a big difference when we're not there. So it's going to be a really, really great book, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm on chapter 13 or 14 right now, so it's almost done.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. So,
And all my books are, I'm sorry, and all my books are available on Amazon as well, and my website. So, go ahead,
so
Paul.
do you expect or do you receive any speaking engagements?
I have been invited to a few, and I'm definitely open for it. I always make time for speaking engagements because I like trying to help people help themselves. That's my goal now, right? To try to help people help themselves. And so I, it's odd too, Doctor. For a long time, I thought I was strange because I knew what my purpose or my passion was in life. And after I wrote this book, I realized that Serve Sandwiches is much bigger than I am. And my goal is to try to help people help themselves. And so that's my mission.
So, what do you do for fun? You're doing all this writing, you're doing all this speaking, you're doing all this, stuff for doing public service. What do Anthony Owens do for himself? What is fun for you?
I love to fish. Um, I love to bowl. I've been married for 40 years now, so I have a wife.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I have a wife that keeps me busy as well. So, um, you know, um, just being oh yeah, what really keeps me busy on top of those that I just mentioned, I have 2 grandchildren. I have a 4-year-old granddaughter, and I have a 10-month-old grandson. And they keep, and you know what's so rewarding is that I'm doing things with them that I wasn't able to do with my child because I was on deployments and things of that sort. And you can relate to what I'm talking about in that regard. Um,
Yes, yes.
and so now it's almost like God gave me a do-over, and I'm much better at being a grandparent than I was a regular father. I can tell you that.
It's amazing you say that because I know I am too. So, we got 30 seconds left. Leave us with words of an inspiration.
Know that you are important. We are all important, and don't allow anybody to make you feel less than who you are. Know your worth, and do not accept anything less than that. Know that you matter all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Anthony Owens. He's the author of Serve Sandwiches, and I'm looking forward to the other books that you discussed and talked about. And we're just going to be, when the other books come out, we're going to have you back.
Oh, I have no problem with it. Right now, like I said, 3 books are already out, 3. And the next one, like I said, is Fatherhood Matters. And I think I might take a break after that, but you never know.
That's right. Mr. Owens, tell my audience, bye, peace, whatever you want to say.
Well, I want to say thank you for having me up here, first of all, and I appreciate it. And I thank you, and I welcome the opportunity to do it again if it's okay with you.
All right. Well, you have it, folks. This has been the Dr. Ron Smith Investigation Show. My time is up, and I thank you for yours.
Thank you. Take care.